They say the numbers never lie, but in the case of Peter Bosustow, they tell only half the story. With the buzz, there were marks, kicks and goals, and star factor aplenty. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Mike, and honoured to be here.
I feel like I'm in the presence of royalty.
I don't know about that, but, gee, it's good to be here. It's
well, you're back home, aren't you?
Yes.
Lane Park, this is where it all started?
It all started about 40-odd years ago, but, gee, the ground doesn't look any different. But, no, it's a wonderful career, and, as I say, very honoured for you to interview me.
Well, thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
Your father played here?
Yes, he did.
And played at Carlton?
He played 65 games for the Perth Demons here, and went across there in 57 to play with Carlton. Played about 22 games, Mike, with the number 4.
Number 4.
Number 4.
Isn't it amazing, yeah.
And I didn't know that until a few years after that, but it was just an honour to wear number 4 with, with a lot of those players that have worn it. Bit of a story about the number 4. I'm sure you'll bring that up.
So when you got there, did you know that your father had worn 4, and did you request it or not?
No, I didn't. No. I didn't know that he'd actually worn that.
Did you ask for 25, Jez's number?
No, I didn't.
That
was another one that they were trying to put the pressure on me. The story goes, Mike, that I played a couple of the scratch matches over there, and as you know, Carlton are notorious for not performing in scratch matches, and played pretty well. The best 3 on the ground were Mike Fitzpatrick, Kenny Hunter and myself, because we're all West Australians, exactly. And it got to the stage where they thought, oh, this bloke might be able to play a little bit. On the Tuesday night, they come across with a couple of numbers. Peter, which one would you like to wear? Would you like to wear 25? I said, you've got to be joking. I've got enough pressure on me now to take the great man's number. They offered me number 28, again, another Carlton legend, Percy Jones. Yep. Number 1 was available as well. I thought, oh, numero uno? No, I can't put up with that.
Greg Wells had left,
Well, Greg was there, actually, and I think he got it that year as well.
The same year, yeah.
And, of course, number 4 came up with Vinny.
Vinny Catoggio.
Yes, and he was, of course, moved across to Melbourne. Yep. And I took the number 4 over, so that's how that come about.
Did you do a story with Lou Richards before your first game?
Yes, well, that was sort of a part of it. Lou, as such a great mentor for people, I think, as well. I played the very good game against Hawthorn in the scratch match, and he come to me and he come to Carlton and said, "Can we interview young Bosustow?" And they said, "Yep, no worries." So I was out on the training track, and Lou said, "Peter, we can hear you jump the high as this grandstand. You can tackle like a machine. You can kick some goals, and you're just an all-over good player." I said, "Well, Lou, I can jump as high as this grandstand. I can kick freak goals. I can take, it takes sensational mass, tackle like a machine." But he put it in the paper the next day, Mike. So that put a lot of pressure.
So that's on the eve of your first game.
It was on the eve of the first game, which was on the Tuesday, and of course we played the first game on the Saturday against Richmond.
You thrived on that, though. Did you not love the big occasion and the fact that there was the expectation about how well you'd play?
Certainly. Yeah, certainly. And I again, as I say, I went to a great side that really gave me the the latitude, I suppose, to do that particular thing. I had to do the team orientation stuff as well, Mike. Tackling, shepherding, blocking, this sort of thing, which we had a blueprint for. So David gave me a little bit of a licence for that. But look, I've got Lord David Parkin for shaping me. I had a pretty good coach here in Ken Armstrong, Mike, who I was part of a couple of premierships with, and Ken was a very, very good player. But, I thought that I got to myself, at the end of 1980, that I was ready to go. In the meantime, though, Mike, I had a bit of an offer from North Melbourne. Ron Joseph come over at the end of 77 and said, "We'd like you to come over and have a look at the grand final," which was the drawn grand final in 77. Went over there, met Barassi and a lot of them, Ross Glendinning, of course, and Barry was there, Barry Cable. And I signed with North Melbourne under a Form 4.
Under which bound you to North for 2 years.
Correct. And that was what I thought was going to do. In that meantime, Mike, I was going to get more and more game time with Perth, getting to know league football, and I thought that was going to be the next stepping stone. A couple of years went by, and still playing, pretty good. Carlton come knocking, and I said, "I don't know what they're coming over for," and they said, "Well, we'd like to come over and see you play." Their recruiting officer in Brian McMahon was spying on me, I suppose, for 4 or 5, 6 weeks. And in the end, they come over on my 100th game, actually. and there was Jim Ellison, and there was Wes Lofts, and there was Adrian Gallagher, and all the big hierarchy, and Brian. Two of them went to saw Ken Hunter play, Mike, and two of them come to see me.
You had a reasonable day, didn't you?
Played against South Fremantle, who had Maurice Rioli and Stephen Michael and Basil Campbell, terrific players. There was 22,000 people at the game, and I had an absolute day out. I kicked 8 or 9, whatever it was, against them. They said, we're flying you to Sydney.
So that weekend?
That weekend. I got on the plane, flew straight to Sydney. The exhibition games at that stage, Mike, was Essendon and Carlton at the SCG. It was one of the first area that they played those games, and they flew me to the Sydney Cricket Ground. Now, Mike, I looked down and there was a paper bag there, a brown paper bag, and Jim was saying, look, why don't you sign this on the dotted line here and come across and play with us? I said,
take that bag home?
I said, I can't. I've signed with North Melbourne. He said, well, Pete, I can let you know now. They've ripped your Form 4 up and they've signed a couple of other West Australians. Now, I didn't know that at the time, Mike. So
Phil Kelly and Peter Spencer.
Peter Spencer. Yep. True story. And I thought, well, what's in the bag?
Heavy? Was it heavy?
Oh, it was coin, I think, Mike.
Yeah. Did you ever do the count?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
What do you reckon was in it?
Well, there was quite a few $50 notes in there. So
what would they have been up to, Peter?
I think they might have, been about 15.
15
something like that.
Yeah.
I think I've actually declared that with the tax man, Mike, so I won't get in trouble. No.
And that started your journey with the Blues. That first game for the Blues, Peter, you looked a little lost early. Where?
Very lost. Ran out onto the ground, Mike, and there was 77,000 people at the game. Because it was Richmond's unfurling of the flag. Now, 6 months before that, Mike, Kenny Hunter and I played out on this ground in our last game. And they were going 3,000 people. Good on you, Buzz. Good on you, Kenny. Good luck for next year, And then we'll get to Waverley. And there was 77,000 there. I ran around in the first 20 minutes, with my head cut off. I couldn't get my breath. Didn't know what was going on. I did, and I saw the white fella come screaming out. The runner had the white on in those days, and I thought, oh no. He didn't mince his words, Mike. He said, you big-headed from Western Australia.
Really?
And I said...
Who was the runner?
Can't breathe, I can't move. And with that, he's gone to Parkin. I don't know what he said to Parkin, and David just ran out, made him run out there and said, well, tell him to squat down, take 3 deep breaths, stand up, look around the whole 360 and just take it in.
Okay.
And, Mike, that was the best advice, because I went from a big mouth from Western Australia into a person that hopefully, Carlton can call one of, they're good players that played in premiership sides.
So 2 hours later, one of Carlton's most famous supporters of the day, the Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser's got his arm around you in the rooms in a photo.
I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't believe it. I had my jumper off as well, Mike, so I'm meeting the Prime Minister, sort of half naked, but he's a rampant, as you know, Carlton supporter. And it was an honour to meet him. We had such a good win too, Mike. But gee, it was a tremendous honour to meet the Prime Minister. And
6 months later,
the
PM invites the entire Carlton Premiership team up to Canberra for dinner at the lodge.
Flew us up in the number 1 jet, the Commonwealth jet, and that was terrific. We went out to the lodge, and everyone got to meet Tammy and Malcolm. A couple of little incidents happened there.
Did anyone relieve the lodge of some of his cutlery?
No, I didn't. I didn't have anything to do with that.
True story, though, that some of the boys wanted to have a memento of the visit?
Scallywags, Mike.
81 was it the season that you could only dream about, wasn't it? I mean, you go to Melbourne, it's your first year, you win Mark of the Year, you kick Goal of the Year, and you play in the Premiership team.
Well, you asked the question why I didn't, go before that, because I thought at that stage I was ready. I was a red-hot favourite to go to the Sandover medal here. Of course, our medal here polled 7 votes. Now, I walked out of the room there, kicked the chairs over and said, what am I doing here? Come to Perth, and I was red-hot favourite for the Perth Fairest Domestic, polled 5 votes. So I got up on stage there. I won the actual goal kicker of the year, and I just said to them, people, I'm now going to Carlton. I don't think I'm really, required here or wanted here. So
really?
That's what transpired there, and it was a bit of a... well, would you call it circus, Mike? What happened to Carlton? Percy
Percy Jones was relieved of his commission,
and David took over, and David rang me, and he rang Ken Hunter. And he said, Ken, I want you to come over and get used to the tradition, the history, and the real culture of this great club. And I want to try you on this half-back line. Bruce Dool, Val Perovic, and yourself. Shivers still go up my spine thinking about that great half-back line. Ken said, I'm over there, coach, within the next, couple of days, just get myself done. He rang me the next day and he said, Pete, David Parkin, I've just taken over from Percy, and I want you to get over early and get used to the tradition, the culture and the history of the club, and I want to try you on that great half-forward line. Wayne the Dominator Johnson, Mark McClure, and I want to try you on that half-forward line as well. So that was a terrific introduction by David.
Was your brashness, let's call it brashness, was that natural or was it contrived?
I loved performing. Yeah. I loved performing. David Parkin said to me, don't lose that. We don't want you to lose that. If you've got to be brash. One of the most outrageous ones that I agreed with, Mike, was the three champions back one day. I was out for a couple of weeks and with a small injury. And Jimmy Buckley come up to me in the rooms. He said, Buzz, three champions come back today. Manicato in the Liston Stakes, Kingston Town won in Sydney, and the Buzz is back at Carlton.
And you would have thought that was totally reasonable.
Oh, I just thought, that was, well, Jimmy, that was right. But look, that's another thing, Mike. You've got to be very, very careful with teammates. And they knew my brashness, but I didn't take it out of context. I still had to work very, very hard for them on the weekends, and I certainly did that. And I think that's why we're a very good side. But Mike, I didn't really want to lose my brashness because that was part of my weaponry. And if I could take a screaming mark and excite my teammates, that was great. If I laid a sensational tackle on and we kicked the goal, it was just as important.
1981. Buzz, you laid 17 tackles in the game against Essendon.
Do you do your homework there, Mike? I think David Parkin...
17?
David Parkin often says that at some of his functions, and 17 effective too, Mike. There's not these little ones, and that's... Mike, a lot of people say, yep, you can take the mark and you can kick the goal, but that was another important, weaponry I had to my bow. I had a couple of strings, the marking and the goal kicking, but to be a part of that side there, and Mike, really, when you think back of it, Carlton's team in that era was 79, 81 and 82. They won 3 out of 4. Yep. You've got to be a good side to win VFL and AFL grand finals.
And it was even, wasn't it?
It was a great side. We had one superstar. His name was Rod Ashman. Yep. He should have won probably 2, maybe 3 Brownlow medals.
All the Carlton blokes say the same thing about Ashy. And I think outside of Carlton, he probably sits behind Buckley and Sheldon.
Yes.
But the Carlton people revere him, don't they?
Absolutely unbelievable player. Look, we had many champions, Mike. Bruce Dool and Jeff Southby and Johnson. Johnson was a great big name. That's really why I wanted to go there to play with Johnson, because he was such a big game player, and if he turned it on, he would pick up 10, 15, 20 possessions maybe in a half of football, and that's why we were a good side. Wayne Harms, another champion of the club, could turn it on just like that. Buckley and Marcoux and Sheldon. You mentioned that part of the Mosquito fleet, Glascott and Malin on the wings. It was such an even team. So much so, Mike, we only had 2 changes from 81 to 82 because we had 2 that retired.
I want to ask you how you felt when the legendary Jack Dyer called you a good ordinary player.
I answered that on the Saturday. I kicked 8 goals against South Melbourne, and then I became a very good ordinary player, Mike, which again was at least it was a step up from the great Jack Dyer. But I probably didn't get my brashness until I went to Melbourne. The confidence I got, Mike, very funny story. I must give you. I flew over on the plane. David said, look, come over and come down to training and get used to it. Then I went on the train, had 6 or 7 Scotch and Cokes on the plane.
Which year are you talking
This
about?
is 81. This is when I first come over. And Carlton hierarchy was at the airport, whisked me out to training. David said, you can train, Buzz. And I thought, oh, hello, I'm in trouble here. Going up the hill at Heidelberg there, Mike, and did about 4 or 5 or 6 of them. Come back, in the corner. Buzz, you can go over there and do a tackling drill with Bruce Dool and Val Perovic. Now, Pero was a bricklayer, had arms of rock, and of course Dooley was just sensational. I said to Dooley, please don't let him near me. Anyway, went around, got a big bear hug from the Pero, staggered to the side, Mike, spewed and vomited me heart out, and I thought I heard from one of the guys, who in the hell we got here from Western Australia?
Buzz, there was a view at Carlton when you arrived. One, that you were a very talented player. Two, that you were lazy. That's what they were worried about. Were they entitled to have that view?
Don't know about lazy, but I didn't like training. But I'd like to prove myself on the Saturday. And David said, if you do that, I'll be quite happy with that. But, you know, I still want you to be fit. Mike, I was pretty fit. You know,
when you went to Melbourne.
There was a little bit of a controversy here that I wanted to go to Carlton because I had one more year of a contract to go. And, you know, they didn't want to release me at that stage, Perth, and I stood out of football. They wouldn't let me train here, so I had to train by myself. So Carlton, through their phys ed area, gave me a program. And I went across pretty good, pretty fit. And the next 2 or 3 months before the season started, I got that, you know, that match fitness and good fitness at a VFL.
Buzz, you were a shooting star in Melbourne. You became a huge name almost instantly. You played 3 years, win 2 flags, and then you come home to Perth.
Yeah, well,
you were 25, weren't you?
I was 25. It's something that I regret now because the reasoning was that my father had a form of leukemia. We're talking 35 years ago, as you just said, Mike, and we didn't know much about that particular disease then. Father was in hospital every 2 or 3 weeks having transfusions and blood tests and et cetera, and I got to the stage where at the end of the 3 years I thought to myself, well, look, I'll come back and I'll take up you know, a bit of the slack from your dad and we'll go from there. Didn't work.
Was your father keen for you to come home?
No.
No?
No.
He wanted you to stay?
He wanted me to stay.
Yeah.
I thought I'd do the right thing. I'd never forgive myself, Mike, if something had happened to him in that time. But there was a little bit of movement early '84, Mike. John Elliott took over. I think you remember that name from Carlton.
I do. I know it well.
And Wes Loss invited me to come over there with my father.
So you've played '83.
Yes.
You've then decided to come home, sign a contract with Perth.
Yes.
And then the Blues say, no, we want you back.
Exactly. They were going to hold out for the clearance, but I'd actually signed, so there was a bit of a confusion there. We ended up at John's mansion in Toorak, and there was a lot of negotiation, I suppose you can put it that way, and there was a lot of money that was thrown at me and Dad to take it up and to come back and play '84. This is 1984. Yep. And, you know, got to the stage where the negotiations fell down because of the contract and because Perth wanted me to come back and
so
play
Perth
that
wouldn't
year.
let you go.
Perth wouldn't let me
this
go.
Sounds fanciful, Peter, but someone said to me, someone who I would consider would know, that lot of money totalled $100 grand.
Very close.
They were prepared to give you $100,000 to come back and play with the club that you'd played with the previous year.
Yeah, very close. It was in segments, Mike. It was to do with the sports shop. To maybe get a manager there and take the load off Dad, and movement and moving, I should say, cars, that sort of thing. So it was a package, but it was very, very close to that particular amount.
And you couldn't do it? Perth wouldn't move?
Perth wouldn't do it. I'd already signed, as you mentioned, and got cleared in 1981, and I believe Perth got $100,000. Now, Mike, we're talking nearly 40 years ago here.
Yeah.
Nearly 40 years ago, 35 years ago anyway. It's $100,000 in those days was a lot of money.
When did you realise, Peter, that you'd made the wrong mistake, you'd made a blue? You were massive in Melbourne.
Yes.
And I know that, I mean, we've all got ego, but I know that, Fed, you loved it. You thrived on that.
Some people said I had a very ordinary '84. I got picked twice in a state game.
That was back here.
That's right. I played with Perth that year. I think I kicked 50 goals in 10 games. So I was averaging 5 a game and probably wasn't playing in the forward line, Mike. I was played, you know, probably more in the middle, but still kicked those goals. I was picked in a state game to go to Adelaide and to play for Western Australia, which I did quite easily. 2 weeks before that, Mike, it got to the stage where Carlton come over and said, we need you to come back. And that was exactly how they put it. We need you to come back and we're going to see Perth. We'll take the pressure off you. You don't worry about it. We'll go and see Perth. If there's any chance that we can get you across to play the remainder of 1984.
Which is just interrupt, sorry, but 84 was the time when you could do it. Clearances went until June the 30th.
That's correct, 30th of June. Yeah. Both sides could not come to an agreement on a clearance. I believe...
On a clearance fee.
Yeah. I believe it was 25 grand that Perth wanted, and Carlton were only prepared to pay 20. Now, Mike, I only found that out about 10 or 12 years ago when I spoke to Ian Collins about this, and Ian said, yes, it was around about that figure. And I said, Ian, I would have paid the $5,000 myself to come back over, because I thought that, you know, VFL football and myself at that stage was hand in hand.
But they would have made it at the gate.
Yeah, well...
If the papers are announcing Bosustow's back, there would have been an extra 5,000 or 10,000 people there anyway.
And I would have given you the scoop, Mike, because you would have known. So,
Let's talk about the two famous Bosustow, not incidents, but performances of excellence. So the mark of the year at Carlton.
Yep.
And that was, I think, that's as good as mark as I've seen.
Thank you.
Is that the high point of your marking career?
There's a great story.
Yeah.
Great story of that. I was out the week before. My great mate, Kenny Hunter, took an absolute skyscraper the week before, and Mark McClure was on the grandstand with me, and he turned to me and says, well, he's just fixed the mark of the year up, hasn't he, Buzz? True story, Mike, as I sit here. And I said, don't worry about that, Sellers. I'll fix that up next week. And you wouldn't believe it. We're sitting in the stand, Mike, and I'm a bit of a prank, and we pranked each other, and, you know, and that's the camaraderie that I think that we had. And I was sitting in the stand, and I tapped McClure on the shoulder, and I said, Sellers, I've just had a premonition. He said, what are you talking about? You know, and I said, I've just had a premonition. I've just taken a screamer in the goal square. And Mike, you wouldn't believe it. 2 or 3 hours later, it come about where it was again the stars must have aligned and the planets must have aligned, and just got that terrific ride, and went up in the pack, took the mark virtually on top of the shoulder. Swan absolutely hates it. He said I took the ball out of his hands.
Swan
Mackay. He was alongside me.
Taller than Swan, he
was in the goal square with me that day, and he often says, and I just say to him, I said, look, you're in history, because every time the mark comes up, you're in the photo. That's right.
And the goal when you smothered Ian Nankervis' kick at Waverley?
Very important part of the game, and that's something that I look back on too, Mike. The situation of the game when you've got to do a great tackle, or you've got to do a shepherd, you've got to do a block, etc., etc. Come over the back of the pack. Brucey Dool cut one off across half back, kicked it to Bomber Sheldon in the middle, and give it to Jimmy Buckley, and Jimmy thought that I'd stand on someone's head and take the chest mark. That's how good a kick he was. Went over the back of the pack, and I just thought I'd run him down, sort of dived at him, smothered the ball. Mike, history may have thing that it might have rolled out and it wouldn't have got anything, but it's it's stayed on its end.
But you almost seemed to take it out of off his boot.
Yeah. Smothered it virtually right off his boot, and it sort of landed virtually straight down. I looked down, and I was just going to run in because I thought I'd had 10, 15 metres on everyone, but I saw the three Geelong players sort of racing at me. Just had a quick look and shaped the ball, and it just went straight through the middle. To say I was pretty pleased with it, Mike, was, it's a bit of an understatement.
I think you were in awe of yourself that day, Peter.
Jono loved it. He dived at me from about 20 metres away and bowled me over. McClure, all pomp and ceremony for Mark. No, just come over, pick me up, get on with the play.
That's right, he would've.
Just kick another one.
Hey, I want to take you back to your last game in Melbourne.
Yeah.
It finished on a sour note, didn't it?
Yeah.
You played against North Melbourne. According to the boundary umpire who reported you for hitting John Law, he said, quote, it was the hardest punch I've seen in a football match in almost 150 games. And you were suspended for 4 matches.
It was. I was. Look, I don't think it was anywhere near that, Mike. It was a situation where John grabbed me, and I sort of, took it, and I said to him, don't grab me again. A couple of minutes later, out of the goal square, let out, he grabbed me, and I sort of just swung around and sort of connected, I didn't know whether I connected with his fist or his head. John got straight up and on with the game, niggled me a little bit more, and I thought the end of it. At quarter time, the umpire came over to me and said, player 4, I've reported you for hitting player 13 for North Melbourne. All didn't go well for me at the tribunal, Mike, as you've just mentioned there. I got 4 weeks. But that particular statement, I was just astonished with, because I looked at my advocate and I said, gee, I'm in big trouble here, aren't I? And I think he said something like, it was the best king hit I've ever
Did he?
sing as
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
Mike. So,
yeah.
you know, I thought I was in a bit of trouble then. But you know, I also got reported for hitting Gary Dempsey that day too, because I had another one to answer for.
Well, you cried during the hearing of the Dempsey case. Were they crocodile tears or,
No,
they were
look,
genuine?
I was devastated. I was really devastated because I heard those particular statement. I didn't like it at all. I think it was the next suspension I had to, or sorry, the report I had to answer to, and I couldn't get my words out, Mike. I just got to the stage where I thought to myself, geez, I'm going to miss finals. If the Blues win 4 games and I can play in a grand final, that's what might happen. But I think it just got to me that that statement was very damning. I don't think I play football like that.
No, I agree with that. You mentioned Stephen Kernahan. He also wore number 4 at Carlton. Who was the best player to wear number 4 for the Blues?
Well, the story goes, Mike, that when he's not in the room, I am, and I do have to have a look around, and I say I'm the greatest number 4 that ever wore it at Carlton. And if he's in the room, I've got to go back to number 4 because he's 1, 2, and 3, and I really do believe that because he's such a great player. But look, I'm just honoured to be in that particular little area with him.
Well, Peter, let me say this. In the early 80s, you were one of the very, very few players that supporters of every club loved watching play. Wasn't long, 3 years. It should have been probably 8 or 10, but we love seeing you play, and it's great to catch up.
Thank you, Mike.